In the beginning of the episode, we see the protagonist, Oren Dura, cutting down a pack of horned rabbits deep inside a dungeon. Since he isn't struggling much, he calmly notes that he hasn't lost his touch as a swordsman yet. Moments later, a group of goblins rushes him, so Oren starts things off by casting a support spell on himself, boosting both his physical strength and his sword. He explains to us that support magic is usually meant for party members, but since he's going solo, he has no choice but to cast it on himself. With his stats enhanced, he slices through the goblins with ease. But the problem is that they just keep coming. As he fights, Oren keeps a close eye on the clock, explaining that his support spell has already been active for 2.5 minutes. Eventually, the effect wears off, but since he isn't supporting anyone else, his mana reserves are still high. Without hesitation, he recasts the spell and keeps slaughtering monsters. He goes on to explain that the duration of support magic depends entirely on a person's magic resistance, and in his case, it lasts exactly 3 minutes. By carefully tracking the timing, Oren keeps refreshing the spell seconds before it expires, all while admitting that an ordinary adventurer like him shouldn't really be acting as a jack of all trades. He then reveals that he used to be an enchanter before being suddenly kicked out of his party. This leads into a flashback from 2 nights earlier, where Oliver, the party leader, approaches Oren along with the rest of the team. At first, Oren assumes it's some kind of bad joke, since he and Oliver are childhood friends who've been together for years. But Oliver coldly tells him that he's endured Oren's incompetence long enough. Annalie and Derek back him up, saying that Oren has only been holding them back. Completely stunned, Oren recalls how 8 years ago, he and Oliver formed the party together from nothing, eventually climbing all the way to S rank. They even earned the title of the Heroes Party after becoming the only group to clear the 94th floor of the Great Southern Dungeon. To Oren, being kicked out feels like losing both children in a divorce. Desperate, Oren begs for another chance and demands to know why Oliver suddenly changed. Oliver explains that during a joint raid a few weeks ago, he saw how insanely powerful the enchanters from other S-rank parties were, and that made them realize just how weak Oren really was. Oren argues back, saying he's originally a swordsman, so of course he can't match full-time enchanters. Even so, he's created his own original magic and contributed plenty. Derek doesn't care, claiming Oren only switched roles because Oliver was better with the sword. Oren denies it, insisting he switched because he had the most aptitude, and that his self-made spells are the reason they survived the deepest dungeon floors. But Oliver shuts it all down, revealing that he's already chosen a replacement enchanter. After apologizing for betraying him, he turns away. With nothing left to say, Oren accepts his fate and leaves in silence, only to be stopped by Annalie, who vents her frustration by calling him a clownish jack of all trades who thinks he can do everything back in the present. Oren admits to himself that she's not wrong. Right now, he's acting as both a swordsman and an enchanter. Still, he vows to master both paths so no one can ever belittle him again. After clearing the floor, he heads toward the teleportation crystal, only to notice a group of adventurers rushing past in a panic. They're arguing about how they abandoned a girl during a fight with orcs. Their leader justifies it by saying she only joined the party that day, so sacrificing her was unavoidable. Hearing this, Oren sees his own situation reflected in hers. Furious, he confronts them, tearing apart their excuses and forcing them to reveal where they left her. The girl turns out to be a young enchanter who's barely holding on by maintaining a weak barrier against the orcs. Crying and begging for help, she watches as her barrier finally shatters. At that exact moment, Oren arrives, blasting the monsters back with a wind spell to create distance. He reinforces himself with support magic and then takes on the orcs alone. His movements are so clean and overwhelming that the girl can't even tell whether he's a swordsman or an enchanter. She's never seen orcs cut down so effortlessly. Once the last monster falls, she collapses to her knees in tears, overwhelmed by the fact that she's still alive. Oren escorts her safely out of the dungeon, but just as he's about to leave, she stops him and asks for his name. She introduces herself as Sophia Clodel, and her surname immediately rings a bell for Oren. He introduces himself in return, but Sophia insists on treating him to dinner as thanks. Despite his refusal, her puppy dog eyes eventually wear him down, and he agrees. She takes him to a shop marked with a rabbit crest, which Oren recognizes as the same symbol on her cape. That's when he realizes she belongs to one of the largest guilds around, the Night Sky Silver Rabbits. Inside, Sophia runs into her older sister, Selma, who's there for a business meeting. Seeing Sophia with a man, Selma immediately jumps to conclusions and scolds her for having a boyfriend. Sophia quickly denies it, but when Selma looks closer, she recognizes Oren. Oren knows her as well, identifying Selma as the leader of the strongest S-rank party in the guild and the most powerful enchanter on the continent. She's also the one who revolutionized party composition by assigning specialized roles, a change Orin secretly resents since it forced him to abandon the sword and become an enchanter. Orin senses Selma's strange expression and asks if she's angry with him. She snaps back, accusing him of going after her little sister. Realizing the misunderstanding, Orin explains that they're only having dinner and that he has no romantic interest in Sophia at all. Somehow, that only makes Selma angrier, as she takes it as an insult toward Sophia. Before things spiral further, Sophia reveals that Orin saved her life. Selma immediately puts the pieces together, realizing Sophia snuck into the dungeon alone against her wishes. Although annoyed, she's relieved that Sophia is safe, forgives her, and makes her promise not to do anything reckless again. She then sincerely thanks Orin and apologizes for her earlier behavior. Over dinner, Selma recalls their time together during the joint raid, where both she and Orin served as enchanters. She admits that his support magic helped tremendously. Sophia, shocked, asks if Orin is someone famous, and Selma casually reveals that he's a former member of the hero's party. When Orin confirms he was kicked out just days ago, Selma immediately realizes he's now a free agent. Seeing her chance, she invites him to join their guild's training expedition the next day. She explains that a group of A-rank adventurers will speedrun 50 dungeon floors to train new recruits, something that normally takes months. Selma hints at a shortcut and admits she's under pressure from sponsors. Orin quickly figures out that the real goal is power-leveling rookies by having veterans defeat the floor bosses for them. Impressed, Selma confirms it and asks him to help, offering generous compensation. Yet despite feeling happy to be needed, Orin refuses, still haunted by being labeled a weak enchanter. He insists he doesn't want to be an enchanter anymore. But when Sophia looks up at him and begs for his help, he wavers. He doesn't promise anything, only saying he'll think about it, and clarifies that if he joins, it'll be as a swordsman. Selma is surprised but accepts it, assuming he'll switch roles if things go south. She tells him to come to the Silver Rabbit's headquarters if he decides to join. Afterward, Orin visits an old man's shop, where he served tea and thanked for boosting the store's sales. When Orin apologizes for not being able to promote it anymore, the old man sees through his shaken confidence and reminds him that titles don't define who he is. Moved by his words, Orin thanks him with tears in his eyes. The next morning, Orin arrives at the Silver Rabbit's Guild, where Selma is already waiting at the gate. She's clearly been expecting him and smiles when she sees him. She notes that he looks far more alive than before, and Orin admits that he feels relieved after leaving the hero's party and is excited to see where his new path leads. And with that, his new journey finally begins. Moments later, Orhan and Selma head out to meet the leader of the Night Sky Silver Rabbits, a man named Vince Briers. By the time they arrive, Vince has already heard countless stories about Orhan and the kind of abilities he brings to the table. Because of that, he's convinced right away that Orhan would be an incredibly valuable addition to their group. Orhan responds politely, saying it's an honor to meet the leader of such a famous and well-known clan. Still, before agreeing to anything, he asks if he can hear more details about the teaching expedition first. Vince nods, then turns to Selma and tells her to break everything down for him. The three of them sit down together, and Selma starts laying it all out in a calm and organized way. As she talks, the scene cuts back to the past. Selma had just found out that Orhan had left the hero party, so she immediately went to report the news to Vince. When Vince heard about it, he was certain the hero party wouldn't be nearly as strong without Orhan around. Selma agreed and explained that Orhan's support magic pushed the party far beyond what they actually deserved. She admits that his magic effects themselves are weaker than average, but his casting speed is absurdly fast, at least 4 times faster than her own. On top of that, his ability to read the battlefield and apply the exact support spell at the perfect moment is what makes him an ideal enchanter. The scene shifts back to the present meeting. By now, Orhan understands the general plan. There will be 10 rookie parties, along with 5 escort members, with Orhan and Selma included among the escorts. The rookie teams will rotate, taking turns fighting monsters inside the dungeon. If anything dangerous or unexpected happens, the escorts will jump in immediately to handle it. Orhan understands most of it, but one thing keeps bothering him. He points out that there are only 5 escorts. Selma responds by saying the goal is to raise the rookies to level 51, and if there were too many escorts, the dungeon would be far too easy. According to her, limiting the number of escorts is meant to keep things challenging so the rookies can grow faster. Even so, Orhan can tell right away that this explanation isn't the whole truth. Still, he decides not to press the issue. Instead, He says he understands and agrees to take part. With that settled, Vince explains the payment. Orhan will receive 2 gold coins up front, and 10 more if the mission is completed successfully. The following day, he arrives at the dungeon entrance where all the students are already gathered. Before long, he runs into Selma and Sophia. When he takes a closer look at Sophia, he notices that her outfit stands out from the others, so he casually compliments her on it. Sophia instantly turns bright red, clearly flustered by his words. Selma sees the reaction and is left completely speechless. A moment later, Selma looks around and realizes many of the students look nervous, tired, and discouraged. Seeing this, she quietly asks Orhan if he can help lift the mood before they head in. Sophia heads back to her party, while Selma brings Orhan over and introduces him to the rest of the escort team. There's Anthem and Bernard, both serving as defenders, and Kathy, who handles healing. Orhan studies them carefully and quickly realizes that they make up a solid and well-balanced group. Even so, he can't help wondering what they would have done if he hadn't joined. His instincts keep telling him something about this mission feels off. But no matter how much he thinks about it, he can't quite put his finger on why. Soon after, Selma steps forward to address the students. Just by looking at their faces, she can tell how tense they are. To calm them down, she announces that they're being escorted by Orhan, a man who reached floor 94 of the dungeon and who was once part of the hero's party. The reaction is immediate. Excitement spreads through the group, and their anxiety fades away. Many of them start believing that with someone like Orhan around, they'll be just fine. Once things settle down, Orhan quietly asks Selma if hyping him up like that was really necessary. Selma tells him it absolutely was, explaining that keeping the students calm and confident is part of their job as escorts. After thinking it over, Orhan realizes she's right and lets it go. Orhan is then assigned to escort group 10, which turns out to be Sophia's group. He notices there are only 3 members instead of the usual 4. Assuming someone is late, he asks about it, only to learn that they're actually a 3-person party. Then the group's leader, Logan, steps forward and confidently introduces himself, boldly claiming that he's a great enchanter and that he'll surpass Selma one day. Orhan immediately picks up on his overwhelming confidence and silently hopes his skills can back up his words. Next, Caroline introduces herself as the defender. Orhan quickly notices she isn't wearing any armor and asks if she plans to put some on later. She casually says people ask her that all the time, explaining that her style focuses on dodging instead of blocking, and that armor would only slow her down. Finally, Sophia introduces herself properly and politely, which helps Orhan relax a little. Before long, the group heads into the dungeon. Once inside, Orhan feels relieved as the noise fades and the dungeon's silence settles in. As they move forward, Caroline keeps firing questions at him about the hero party and why he left. Having no intention of admitting he was kicked out, Orhan shuts her down coldly, telling her it's none of her business. Deeper in, 2 demon wolves suddenly appear behind them and charge forward. Orhan notices instantly the trap spells he set earlier activate, killing the wolves on the spot. These traps are nearly impossible to detect before triggering, making them perfect for dealing with threats from behind without slowing the group down. They continue onward and eventually reach floor 20. Along the way, Orhan carefully watches how the party fights. At first, he thought Logan was just an arrogant rookie, but after seeing him in action, he admits Logan has real talent. If he keeps improving, he could eventually hold his own in an A-rank party. His biggest flaw is poor command skills, since his orders are slow and unclear, but Orhan believes experience will fix that. Caroline's speed is incredible and suits her dodging style perfectly, but she rushes in without thinking and relies too much on her daggers, which may lack power later on. Sophia doesn't stand out at first, but Orhan realizes she's better than most rookies. She fights cautiously and holds herself back, yet she has no major beginner mistakes, which makes Orhan genuinely interested in her future growth. Soon after, the escort teams ahead of them defeat the floor 20 boss. Selma tells the students to register the floor on their guild cards, marking the end of training for the day. The next morning, Orhan finds a newspaper and learns that the hero party has already found a new enchanter. Realizing his removal is now public, frustration washes over him. He wishes they'd waited until the expedition ended, worrying how the students might see him now. Still, he pushes the thought aside and heads for the dungeon. On the way, he's suddenly stopped by someone familiar. Luna, one of his former party members, begs him to come back. Calm as ever, Orhan refuses. Luna takes his hands and reminds him of their promise to clear the dungeon together. Something inside Orhan snaps. He pulls away and turns his back on her, reminding himself that the dream was shared by Luna, Oliver, and himself back when they were children. Once, he truly wanted the 3 of them to stay together forever. But now, with everything changed, Orhan finally accepts that some dreams are better left behind. On the way there, Orhan can't help but think back to how he was banished from the hero's party. That exact incident is what today's newspaper bluntly called out, which means every new recruit has probably already read it. And with Selma hyping him up so much for being a former member of the hero's party, the truth crashing down like this only makes things worse. The rookies must be completely unsure of what to think of him now. Before long, Orhan arrives at the dungeon entrance, where all the rookies are already gathered. However, the atmosphere feels nothing like yesterday. The air is stiff, and it's painfully obvious that everyone here has seen today's newspaper. Logan, meanwhile, reflects on how things might have been different if Orhan had left on his own terms. But the paper clearly stated that he was kicked out for being too weak, and that detail changes everything. When Orhan greets the rookies, he's met with mixed reactions. Some respond politely, others awkwardly, and a few barely acknowledge him at all. Just then, Selma shows up alongside Ant, Byrne, and Kathy. She immediately apologizes to Orhan, admitting that she unintentionally caused this misunderstanding by pushing the idea that he used to be part of the hero's party to put the rookies at ease. Orhan quickly shuts that down, telling her that none of this is her fault. He encourages her to keep her head held high, lead the party into the dungeon as planned, and let him provide support from the back. Ant, Byrne, and Kathy chime in as well, saying that whatever happened between Orhan and the hero's party doesn't matter. What truly matters is that Orhan is one of the very few people alive who made it to the 94th floor and lived to tell the tale. Hearing that eases some of the pressure weighing down on him. Orhan then heads over to his party, where Sophia and Carol greet him with genuine warmth, wishing him a heartfelt good morning. Logan, on the other hand, seems hesitant, unsure of how he's supposed to treat Orhan now. Picking up on the tension, Orhan decides to break the ice himself and asks if they saw today's newspaper. Sophia and Carol admit that they did see it, but brush it off. Logan, however, mentions that he doesn't follow Fox News and directly asks Orhan if what the paper said was true. Orhan answers honestly, saying that technically it is true, since he was banished from the hero's party for being too weak. That's when Sophia snaps, unable to take it anymore. She insists that he's lying, reminding everyone how she personally saw him take on a massive horde of orcs by himself and defeat them without breaking a sweat. Orhan thanks her for believing in him and reassures the group that even though he's no longer part of the hero's party, he's still more than capable of helping them safely reach the 51st floor. He asks them to trust him. Sophia and Carol seem satisfied with that answer, but Logan looks conflicted, feeling as though he's been betrayed. With that, they head into the dungeon. Today's objective is to clear from the 21st floor to the 35th floor. For now, Orhan is supposed to stay back, give no orders, and only step in if things spiral out of control. The expedition starts off smoothly. On the 24th floor, Carol takes care of the monsters with her twin daggers. By the time they reach the 30th floor, Sophia handles the larger monsters with ease, surprising even Orhan, who begins to wonder if he underestimated her. Soon enough, they arrive at the 31st floor, the middle floors. This is where guides are expected to step in. Suddenly, he senses a group of goblins nearby and alerts the party to prepare for combat. He also notices a stray orc wandering close by, making the situation trickier. Still, he's confident in the rookie's abilities that he orders Carol to take on the goblins, while instructing Sophia to deal with the orc using long-range magic. Orhan then turns to Logan and tells him to use his support magic. Before Orhan can even finish speaking, Logan has already set up multiple magic circles and begins casting agility spells on Carol. Even so, Logan remains unconvinced, thinking Orhan's commands are obvious and that anyone could have given the same instructions. Suddenly, the situation takes a turn when the orc triggers Sophia's PTSD. She freezes up, panicking and failing to launch an attack. In his panic, Logan looks toward Orhan, questioning what kind of guide he really is. That's when he notices Orhan casually forming a magic sign that drastically reduces the orc's speed. Orhan moves beside Sophia, calmly telling her to take her time, improperly, and remember that she's stronger than an orc. She takes a deep breath, regains her composure, and fires off a massive fireball that completely obliterates the orc. Everyone is left stunned, including Orhan, who had no idea Sophia could use advanced-level magic. Carol rushes over and hugs Sophia, while Orhan praises her for the perfect shot. They continue onward and eventually reach the 35th floor, where they run into a death tarantula. Logan immediately panics, convinced that this is the end. But Sophia and Carol place their full trust in Orhan and wait for his orders. Orhan tells Logan to cast agility up and strength up on Carol, and magic up on Sophia. Logan doubts the plan, thinking Orhan has lost it by repeating the same strategy, but he follows through anyway. Orhan orders Carol to engage the monster head-on and keep its attention focused on her. She nods and charges forward. He then instructs Sophia to leap onto the monster and shred its back. Sophia immediately gets it, jumping onto the spider and slashing it from head to tail. Orhan warns her to stay sharp and avoid every venomous strike. The tarantula lashes out at Carol, but she dodges and deflects its attacks with incredible precision. Orhan tells Logan to maintain his support spells, reminding him that Carol's life depends on it. He then signals Sophia to pin the monster down. She uses her arrow cutter to slice through its legs, forcing it to collapse. Carol starts celebrating too early, and Orhan warns her that the fight isn't over yet. His warning comes too late, as the spider fires its webs and traps Carol, dragging her closer. Orhan immediately orders Logan to boost Carol's strength and speed. Logan complies instantly, but Carol panics and struggles to break free, begging Orhan for help. Orhan casts a sharpness enhancement on her blades and tells Sophia to ready her rock arrow. Empowered, Carol cuts herself free, and Sophia follows up with her spell, completely nuking the monster. With that, the expedition finally comes to an end as they exit the dungeon at sunset. Orhan praises Logan for his excellent support work, admitting that today's victories wouldn't have been possible without him. Selma congratulates the rookies on their progress and tells them to rest well. Everyone heads their separate ways, but Ant and Burn stop Orhan and invite him out for lunch. After some thought, he accepts, since it's not every day someone treats him. On the way back, Logan asks Sophia about the time Orhan saved her, pressing for details about the spells he used. Sophia recalls that Orhan used a wind blast, enhanced his sword with magic, and sliced through the orcs effortlessly. That's when it finally clicks for Logan. Earlier, Orhan casually used a debuff spell to slow the orc, something even top-tier mages like Selma struggle to pull off. Orhan's timing, spell usage, and battlefield awareness were flawless. Logan realizes he completely misjudged him. Orhan isn't just a mage, he's a genius. Back in the city, Orhan parts ways at a tavern with Burn and Ant, who insist he order anything he wants. They ask about his true role, since he was once an enchanter but now claims to be a swordsman. Orhan explains that he's always wanted to be a swordsman, ever since watching his grandfather slay a massive beast. He fulfilled that dream in the hero's party, but as the floors grew harder, the team shifted to relying on an enchanter. With no one else suitable, Orhan took on the role for the sake of the party. Bitterly, he thinks that the hero's party no longer has what it takes to push further, but decides to leave the past behind. Now, he aims to become a fully self-sufficient swordsman who can conquer even the lower floors alone, unaware that the very next day, the hero's party will cross paths with him in the dungeon he plans to conquer. And that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.